Welcome everybody to the first Edmonton Tug meeting in the new decade. Some of you may know we were supposed to meet at the end of March, but due to some unfortunate events, we had to postpone it. But thankfully, we have the technology today to be able to do something like this, and I'm glad everybody could join. So thank you again for joining this meeting. Jesse, can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so we have some great speakers today. We got Jesse from Alberta Health Services. We got Patricia from Auto Canada, and then we have Shane and Brandy from Tableau. And for the agenda, next slide, please. This is just kind of a rough agenda. There might not be a break depending on how the time is going, but we plan on wrapping things up by 3:30, so you guys can have some time. Next slide, please. So just to do a quick introduction, as many of you may not know who I am, but you might have seen my name in emails or posted on the Edmonton Tableau user group forum. I'm the new administrator for the Edmonton Tug group, or Edmonton Tableau user group. And I started at Onware in about the middle of December. And previously I didn't have a lot of experience with Tableau itself, but I had been working with data for many years in the past. So I previously worked at Konica Minolta, and I built kind of sales reports there. And then later I built financial and project management dashboards for Enbridge and Epcor as well. And all of this was done through Excel. So I consider myself to have pretty decent Excel skills. So if you ever had any questions with Excel, you can feel free to reach out to me. Before I joined Onware, my knowledge of Tableau was, again, very limited, but since December, I spent a lot of time, online training, working through the courses, kind of reading around the community forums and kind of getting my hands on as well. And, Fraser, who's the principal at Onware, has really been really helpful in helping me, develop my skills to where it is today. So as a person that's worked with a lot of data, I was amazed about how powerful Tableau is. And in addition to helping our clients with kind of dashboards and visualizations, I've also started doing a bunch of fun side projects myself. So Jesse, if you just click once, I think it'll show some of the kind of side projects I've done. So on the right there, I built the COVID-19 Alberta dashboard, and it's available on Tableau Public. And then on the left side, we have me and my friends have a golf tournament that we do, and I kind of made a little scoreboard to keep track of our the tournament standings and stuff like that. And we have a little prize pool at the end of the year to do a draw on. So I have a bunch of other ones as well. I have a personal finance dashboard that I have built through Tableau. So it's a very powerful tool, and I love using it. So I'm very excited. That's why I'm really excited to be hosting this virtual Tug meeting, as I would love to see all the cool things that leaders in our local community have been doing with Tableau. And as I mentioned earlier, we have some exciting speakers today: Jesse from AHS, Patricia from Auto Canada, Shane and Brandy from Tableau. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest, which is Jesse from AHS.
Thank you. All right, I'll just get this set up here. There we go. Just let me know when you see that.
Great.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, thanks so much for the invite. I'm very pleased to be able to speak in front of all the participants. And hopefully hear some interesting stories from the other presenters and share a few of ours. I've been working for Alberta Health Services for about 12 years. I've been 19 years in IT, 12 years in healthcare. I do have a couple of startups, and I recently had a brand new little baby boy. So if I start to get off focus, I've had about 5 hours of sleep. So The Alberta Health Services, for those that don't know, is Canada's 5th largest organization. We have about 185,000 users who use our systems. We have support everyone in Alberta, of course, but we also have a hospital actually in Lloydminster on the Saskatchewan side, and we do provide healthcare to a lot of other people, including visitors and such. There's at least 100 companies that operate and use our IT systems. We have about 6,000 servers. We have about 700 different networked buildings, 95,000 computers, at least 2,000 IT staff, and about 16 petabytes of storage. In terms of background, my current team has been running for about a couple years and 2.5, and we are focused on measuring the performance within IT and the Connect Care program, which is a implementation program that is implementing a software called Epic. Our goals are really to reduce costs, improve service delivery, increase risk transparency. And since then, we've created a brand new team, created a new data warehouse. We have set up data to be ingested from hundreds of systems. We've done naturally presentations, increasing data literacy. We've developed quite a few Tableau dashboards, and there's a whole operational savings, which is a lot larger than 1FTE, but I haven't updated that slide for a while. I'll skip this. So today we're going to go through a little bit about how we've done data management, analytics, a little bit on AI, and a little bit on automation. I include that strictly in the context that the Tableau dashboards that we have developed have actually informed a lot of process gaps and identified through those a huge amount of opportunity. Now, the unstructured data that we have in the organization, which feeds into Tableau, naturally using AI to make sense of that adds value. And then once we identify the opportunities, we use automation to actually execute the action, really. And then we're going to go through a few lessons learned. From a data management perspective, we care a lot, at least in my team, about the people. So we actually extract when people have access to each of our different systems. We have 1,800 different enterprise apps. So we have access logs, we have use logs where people are actually, they may have access to it, but they may or may not be using it. And so we track that for our devices and for our applications. We are working to actually join each of the different devices, all the different hardware and software into a financial model so we can understand the financial implications of supporting each of the different people. Then we connect all the people to a building, and we do that through 3 different methods. There's a software called Citrix that basically runs in a server room, runs your applications in a server room, and transports the screen, just the screen, back and forth to your computer. So we understand what buildings that the Citrix is being accessed. We have multiple different data sets that allow us to understand what buildings that computers are used in. And then ultimately, if a device connects through Wi-Fi, we can connect that back to a location as well. We have HR data that we feed in. We have company data that we feed in. We have training data that gets fed in, access permissions, templates, which are another, effectively a role. We have, which all kind of builds into our 360 view of people. This view is valuable because we're implementing this new software called Epic. And in order to understand, we've probably got 100,000 odd people that will use this system once it's implemented in the next few years. And being able to ascertain all of the different people who use a similar system is needed, and a valuable input along with the company and the location is used to prioritize and organize each of these different people into waves. And a wave for us is basically a rollout. And so we've already had 1 rollout in Edmonton, and we're just in the process of starting to talk about the following waves, which are wave 2 to 9. And ultimately after wave 9, all 100,000 people will be implemented. Now, the problem is, of course, you can't do everyone all at the same time. It's just too complicated. And And so what we've been using is all of these different data sources to group people and discern ways of segmenting our different waves in a way that is bearable to our IT service desk and to our desktop teams, because there's new technology that's required, and our server teams to make sure that the infrastructure can support the mass amount of people that will be using the system. The simpler view here is expanded here. And so really from an ERD perspective, each of these is an enterprise system. And this one here is in fact 400 systems. And so you can imagine the amount of data and complexity that we deal with. At a high level, this view shares kind of a high level view. It's just a way of basically presenting all the different inputs. So we've got organizational structure or HR data. We have building data. So we have multiple systems, probably 20 or 30, that have locations noted. And so what we've done behind the scenes is use correlation tables to correlate all the systems that keep track of buildings together, so that we can provide a nice thorough understanding of what our buildings are. And then we have risk data sets, technology data sets, application, which obviously we talked about earlier, permissioning, we have local administrator access, we have security groups that people have access through, and then we have access, of course, or permissions within the applications. We have staffing data, we have at least I think 7 different HR systems, demand data, operations management data, financial data, both for project and operating, and then of course capabilities, which is your strategic enterprise architecture categories. From a processing perspective, we then take all of that data and segment it by the following 4 categories or dimensions, really. And so if you look at the role, organization, building, and FC, almost all of our data sets we can slice that way. So if we're looking for the data of the people that are in the a nurse role or a physician role, we can just simply add a filter, and then all of a sudden a lot of our data sets will are set up to basically allow us to filter by role, by org, which is organizational, and then by building and FC. The org is interesting in that we've created another data set that we use, to be frank, and it's extremely valuable, which is why I'm sharing it. We've literally taken each of the different user IDs of all the different staff, and if Johnny reports to Susie, we have a simple table that, or a column in our database that has Bobby's user ID / Susie's user ID. Really simple. So Bob in one column, his full name, then Sue or whatever the manager's name, and then another column that has the user ID / hierarchically all the way up to the CEO. How we use that is in Tableau, we have a whole series of different dashboards that automatically filter based on who opens it. And we do that by taking the currently logged in user, which is an attribute that you can grab in a formula in Tableau, in a calculation. And then we say, is that person, does that user ID in a contains statement in this existing table? And that way we can actually filter en masse all of our Tableau data to automatically filter based on the HR accountability, which is super handy for those more confidential things where you don't want to share data more broadly. From an application perspective, we went through everyone. We have almost every BI tool. So we have MicroStrategy and SAS and Cognos, almost every solution you can think of. And after assessing them all, we landed on Tableau. And the team quickly got on board. We had great training resources. Our AHS organization has a really mature Tableau implementation, and so we jumped on board, and we're able to quickly iterate and get. We produced quite a bit in the amount of time that we've been in existence. We use SQL Server SSIS packages, which are basically C#.NET code scheduled on a SQL server to ingest to do all of our ETL processes. So we all of these different database types, and we ingest data from most. All of them are sucked into a single Microsoft SQL database using SQL Server integration services packages. We have a lot of scripts because some of our systems don't support direct database access. And so we access data using scripts. And then lastly, we do leverage robotic process automation to ingest data from some of our external systems that are cloud-based, where you don't have access to an API. You can't access the database directly naturally because it's in the cloud. And the robotic process automation allows us to open up the web page, click on the report button, download the report, and then save it to a shared folder where it automatically gets sucked, ingested into our data warehouse. The data correlation is a problem. I'm sure everyone has that problem. So in our case, we correlate many things. We correlate user IDs and applications that don't integrate with Active Directory with application or Active Directory user IDs. And that way we can create that single view of what systems people have access to. We do the exact same thing for locations, and it's really master data management of correlating all the data together. We then present it. So we've got this is just a small segment of the presentation roles, but budget owners, operational managers, and then leadership or management. We try to slice most of our data for a variety of different uses, including for budget planning, cost containment, cost optimization, performance management, process improvement, and resource planning and prioritization. We show a variety of different things based on evidence. We answer strategic questions, ultimately, which ultimately drives action and hopefully leads to improving outcomes. From an analytics perspective, we started in 2017, not 2007, really doing basic kind of BI reporting. Now we're jumping into more AI and into the data science areas, which is really exciting, tons of opportunity. This framework is what we started the team with, really foundationally, and we printed this off. Gartner has a document that was made by a company called CEB that Gartner bought a few years ago. And CEB has basically this underbalanced scorecard document. Has like 80 pages of best practice with regard to IT measurement, but these exact same principles align to the CIO level, the CFO level, or the CEO level. Financial performance is key. Information risk, and security, project performance, operational performance, talent management, which is your staffing measures, and then user satisfaction or customer service or customer satisfaction. Those are certainly some of the top pillars in almost any organization. So what I did was I printed these off with the CIO, reviewed them, prioritized them, and that was kind of our initial launching orders. From a measurement perspective, initially I started looking at our strategic plans, and in our organization we have many, and tried to align the strategies with the goals that and then drilling down to critical success factors, and then drilling down to KPIs, down to KPMs, and then down to KFMs. To be honest, it just didn't work. And so if you're looking at measuring the performance of anything, start measuring what you can. That's my advice. Start at the absolute bottom here. Look at what facts you can measure. And now after a couple years, we are finally working our way back up to the KPI level. But it did take some time in context of performance and ticketing. We have 3 different ticketing systems at least, and so trying to figure out how these things correlated and made sense, and meshing them together into a single view took a lot of work. And but ultimately starting with 3 different vises that had the performance, and then rolling those vises up made a lot more sense, and it made it more bite-sized. I've got a whole series of different sample vises that I'm going to go through quick. They've all been scrubbed, but you can get a sense that here's our tickets every month. MTTR is how many, in this case, days does it take to resolve each of the different tickets, which is basically this viz. And so over the months, you can see that we've had some hot spots. And over the last little while, in the context of service requests, we are low right now, which is great news. Secondly, from a count perspective, we have the number of tickets that have been open or received, and then opened is this one. How many were submitted, and how many were actually this is closed. And so over time, you can start to see when your closed is higher, of course, than your received, then you're getting ahead on the game, which reflects directly on this diagram. So you can see, generally speaking, that we're kind of getting ahead on the service requests, which is great. From a dashboarding perspective, we have so many different dashboards that we have created dashboard of dashboards, which I highly suggest. It was a tip that our Dimer team in HS ended up suggesting, and we leveraged the concepts and created our own dashboard of dashboards. You can see each of the different categories. In our case, we've got kind of our senior level reporting. We have application reporting. We have leadership reporting, performance, project reporting, utilization, which is kind of trending, your base measures that pertain to how much impact is IT seeing. Then we've got the Connect Care portal, and this actually links to another dashboard of dashboards, which is a whole series of different program reporting on projects. Another interesting thing that we have is a viz of how many people have actually accessed the dashboard and how many reports are actually included in that. And so you can you can actually access the data directly from the Tableau server, filter it based on your team, and get a good understanding of how many reports are actually in here. And then secondly, get a good sense of how many people are actually using these vizes, which gives you more support in terms of showing the value that you bring to the organization. Secondly, when you click on this button right here, it actually brings you to an entire viz of just who is actually accessing each of the different dashboards that we've created. Benchmarking, super valuable. Here's a quick financial one using publicly available data. You can see, where we sit, and from a benchmarking perspective, a large healthcare organizations are around here, and we're currently funded around here, at least in 2007. So you can get a sense of where, what would be our ratio compared to Gartner's has been reducing. The performance management, a lot of our dashboards have, they're structured in 3 different sections. One for KPIs, one that actually shows the trigger or why, so the KPI is basically whether you're doing better or worse. You can see the previous month, so you can see directionally where you're headed. The trigger is kind of the best guess of why this number is positive or negative, and then the trend. And I find that this structure does work really well to give people a simple view of where we're at, and then directionally whether it's getting better or worse, and then a quick little description as to why it's getting better or worse. We add READMEs to each of our different dashboards with the purpose. We have definitions and methodology section. We have use and how to actually use the dashboard, description of each of the different data sources, the limitations, if there are any, and then naturally a contact us section for any questions. Correlating data has proven to be extremely valuable, and so often people will create vizes of data in one system, and for the most part, those reporting or those reports, they exist in the existing applications, and so we've really made a focus of not recreating the wheel. No sense creating a report that already exists. If the enterprise app has it, don't waste your time creating a new Tableau dashboard with it. But the value that we've seen is really correlating data across systems. So this data is from one system. This data is from another system. This data at the bottom here is from another system. And then we have our ticketing system data, all correlated down to the application level. So for each of the 1,800 enterprise apps, you can literally click on each of these different circles, which is an application, see how many users are using it, see the TCO, see the servers, see the databases, see the hours that were actually invested in that application during the past month, and see how many tickets that we've gotten since we started using our ticketing system. Growth in trying to use vizes that drive action. So I mean, if you're creating a viz that is answering a strategic question that everyone knows the answer to already. We really try not to do that. And we try to create visits that drive action. In this case, pointing out, hey, this team has a lot of old tickets, and the growth in their tickets has been extraordinary, which is interesting. And so you can start to get a sense across which teams are growing, and from a ticket perspective, and how many tickets that they actually have in there that are old. MTTR, we have a ton of different kinds of contacts from our customers. It's usually around 80,000 contacts per month. And so criticality is really important. Not just showing the negative, I think, is another thing that needs to be really be thoughtful that, when you're looking at a viz, yes, you want to drive action, but you also, sometimes that action is giving people kudos. And so in our case, we have a desktop team that's done a ton of refresh and done a great job of actually consolidating our desktop add remove program titles. And so this is one viz that we did to kind of show how much work that they've done. The tickets in MTTR, so there's a lot of different ways to use Tableau, and so be thoughtful that you're creative with, try different things. This is another one that we found to be extremely handy. Literally taking every single ticket in IT, putting it in one little scatter plot. The older tickets are at the top here, so these ones, and the right is the ones that haven't been touched. So this little one here, to be honest, I would not be worried about any of these because they've been updated recently. Someone is actively working to try and get those resolved. The one I would pick on is this little one. It's old, and it hasn't been touched for a long time. Arguably, it hasn't been touched since the day that it got opened, which is even more concerning. Technology refresh, same kind of thing, trying to measure as many things as you can, just correlate those up. Users is another example where we've got all of our different users. It looks like, sorry, 168 is our current count. I should update the number in the beginning. We've got, we measure tons of different areas. Here's our mobile phones and air card use. You can see that naturally smartphones is increasing, and the air cards and tablets and mobile modems is reducing. Then we've got the VPN and wireless use. So of course we're working from home now, and every month we are seeing a dramatic increase in the amount of people that are set up to work from home. Secondly, the organization's demanding to be mobile, and so part of that is really getting them set up to be able to access wireless technology so they can move around and be more mobile in the work environment. From an AI perspective, we've got we set up an AI community of practice. We've had about 140 different participants from BC all the way to Nova Scotia join us, with speakers from some great places like U of A and IBM and U of C and Johns Hopkins and others, and in fact quite a few talented AI data scientists in Alberta. If anyone has any interest in joining that community practice, do just reach out. Secondly, if you're interested in speaking, I'm always open to speakers. Next up is the machine learning. So we've really started to develop a very just starting knowledge base of Python machine learning development, and so we've been using Python specifically because Microsoft SQL Server 2019 has and in fact 2017 did as well, has a service that you can install called Machine Learning Services. Machine Learning Services installs Python on a Windows server as part of SQL Server. It's built right in, and you can actually run Python directly in there. And so in the cases where we need to use machine learning prior to it getting into Tableau, Tableau Prep does a great job too if you have that capability. If you need to process data en masse and on a schedule, certainly the SQL Server Machine Learning Services is a good option. I do. Oh, sounds good. Thank you. Okay. All right, here, let me, I think I got ahead of myself. Okay. Just a second here. I'll keep going. So from an AI perspective, we've done some machine learning on unstructured ticket data. We're looking at, we have done a little bit of work on general ledger data, and basically just taking that unstructured data, trying to make sense of it. Then from an action perspective, in areas that we've used the Tableau visualizations, we've identified gaps. In many cases, you send those gaps to the operational teams, and they just simply don't have capacity to fix them. And so one case like this was, we had identified that quite a few of the physicians who work for us in the organization, weren't getting the proper order of training and these kind of things. And so we built an automated email that automatically emails them. In fact, upon registering for the courses, it sends them a whole series of information. And we've done actually quite a few different automated emails. We've built websites, and so part of your business process for doing any type of Tableau viz is you need access to the data, and that in many cases doesn't exist. And so the way that we do it is we create Microsoft SharePoint lists in many cases, the majority, and then we use Tableau to use the data that's in SharePoint. In some cases, we extract the data from SharePoint into a SQL database. And then the other case, that in some cases where we have some business requirements where we weren't able to use SharePoint, we actually developed custom websites that are used to collect the data. And so I think having that, software development, having a little bit of experience with AI, and it really can assist the flexibility that your analytics team has. So just a thought. Lastly is robotic process automation. And so, going back to that, using analytics, identify the gaps. We worked with our finance team and just finished a robotic process automation initiative that allowed us to save about 0.8 of an FTE per year in about eight weeks of effort. So super exciting with that. I am froze up here, so I'm going to stop I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm just going to reshare if you don't mind. There we go, and share screen. Okay, that didn't work so good. So from a lessons learned, a lot of our work that we've done is really identifying the pain. So we've gone through, talked to leadership, talked to our different groups. We've got a really large IT department with a couple thousand people. So booking meetings with each of the different directors has taken a lot of time. Booking meetings with our 200 odd managers has taken time, but there's been a lot of fruit that's come from it, specifically identifying what their pain is and trying to think through, all right, you've got this pain, is there any data that we can use? And then getting access to the data. We've now developed a fairly tuned process to get access to data, to get access, ingest the data, get approvals to get access to the data. In our organization, we have a ton of governance with regard to stakeholder approvals and whatnot. And then get the data ingested. Make sure that you validate the data, create the Tableau visualizations, test them, and then basically we have a moving from test environment to basically production, which happens basically naturally in a production environment, but we have a classification for test vises that have not been validated. We get the data repository owners to validate the data, then we move them into production, and moving them to production really is the last step is connecting them to the dashboard of dashboards so that they're publicly available. And that dashboard of dashboards is shared with all of our different employees in IT. And then they have the opportunity to add a bookmark to one link instead of being, and as the new visualizations get added, they automatically get access to them and they can see that they're published by getting access to the dashboard. So it does help with our change management, or to have a really solid change management process on the IT side, but in your case, you're deploying the Tableau visualizations. But secondly, from a people perspective, and so I strongly suggest taking Process change management training. Process is a method of basically going through and identifying the resistance that you get from people and helping them, working through barriers and things like that to make sure that your initiative is successful. Number 3 suggestion or lesson would be to start small. So, starting with a large team, it does set expectations, and I've seen some analytics teams that have failed because they just simply bit off more than they could chew. Starting off small and, grabbing and just measuring what you can, getting access to the data sets that you can initially, correlating them across to make sense and to find value. Visible sponsorship is extremely key. And so, if you look at all the different sponsors in our organization, we're fortunate we've got the CIO who's been great. We had some major problems initially getting support quickly from each of the different data repository owners, because each of our 1,800 enterprise applications has a different owner. And so working with them, with our CIO, she simply said, hey, why don't we get a briefing note together, raise it up through the leadership and get support for you guys to get access to every system for the data that you need. And so, yeah, we worked together and created a briefing note and got support to get access to every system, which really sped up the process of meeting with the stakeholders, getting their approval, and sometimes we were declined. And so, I think having a visible sponsor is extremely valuable and useful. Next up, creating a placemat. And so, we walked through that whole, the placemat that we had done. Having the concepts on a single pane of glass and walking people through the process from start to finish and getting leadership support of that vision is certainly makes things go a lot more smoothly. Next up, we've got sharing the placemat with your organization's influencers. And so in my case, we created the placemat and shared it with each of the different the organization's directors, had a big meeting with them, and then we had the meeting with each of the two different management teams, both in Edmonton and Calgary for the most part. Then the using Agile. And so for those that are not familiar with Agile, I would certainly recommend checking out the Agile. It's amazing. In our case, we use Scrum. Scrum is a really simple process that anyone can really follow, which takes each of your different initiatives. You review them, you create a backlog, you write them all down. You are on the first of each month, or whether you're doing a 2-month sprint or a 1-month sprint, you would meet and you would review all the different things in your backlog or your Kanban, and then you would commit to those things that you can do in the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And at the end of the month, you track your progress, and then at the end of the month, you review and trying to brainstorm your barriers. The benefit of this is that you're not committing, especially in the context of analytics. The business requirements change fairly frequently, and having a month cadence I find to be a lot more valuable than my background, which is IT project management, where often the projects were multiple years in duration, and estimating and committing to something 3 or 4 years in advance is your accuracy is a lot less. And so doing month or in 2 week or whatever you're comfortable with sprints really makes a lot of sense. Prioritizing your work, naturally, the Scrum process does that. But having no matter what you do, having a list of all the different backlog and recording it and keeping track of your success. The backlog is just as useful for tracking the things that you want to do as tracking the things that you have done to show your leadership the value that you're bringing. Creating the dashboard of dashboards, which we spoke to, and then of course measuring who is using your dashboards so that you can show the value. Similar to this is right here. If anyone is interested in, does the work that you're doing get used? Well, we can quickly say that yes. with certainty, there are a lot of people that are actually using our dashboards. So I've got a fairly brief background of IT, and I realize now that I'm a little short on my time. Why IHS? We're definitely a fairly large organization. We're pretty flexible. Currently, I work from home, and we have offices everywhere in Alberta. There's a ton of IT. Sorry, our counts are 2,300, not 2,000. People in IT that are all highly skilled. Work on some pretty cool projects, career progression, pension, a lot of time off. Any questions?
If anybody had any questions, I can just put it in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen there.
Hey, Jerry. Absolutely. Yeah, if anyone is interested, feel free to email me at jesse.tut@ahs.ca, and I'll get you added. All right, so thanks for your information. Do you consider to help users with self-serve concept? So I guess, Nuruddin, are you interested around trying to get a share the, or are you speaking with regard to publishing the data to Tableau so that people can actually access the data on the Tableau server, like a published data source? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If in some cases we give people access to our database, in some cases we extract Excel documents and email them. In some cases we email the information, and certainly if there's ever a need, we can absolutely publish the data to a Tableau to Tableau so they can access it directly. Is there any other questions?
If there are any other questions, if something comes up, feel free to type it into the Q&A, and then if you had a specific question to Jesse later, I'm sure he'll be able to pop back on and answer it as well. So we have another question. Thanks, Jesse. What's the best practice you use for organizing dashboards?
Sure. Yeah, so it kind of depends on the dashboard, but typically we use the dashboard of dashboards to segment each of the different types of reporting. So we group or categorize our reporting that way. Then each of the different dashboards are structured. So typically we have one dashboard for each purpose. And then we do a lot with filtering. And so from top to bottom, we've gone through the extra effort of creating correlation tables that correlate. In our case, you can think of staff to groups to services to portfolios, and then portfolios, or another way of saying that is staff to managers, managers to leaders, and then leaders to IT portfolios, which is large groups of leaders. And so the nice thing about that is in Tableau, from once you join that data to that correlation table, you can automatically filter all, and the same dashboard can be used for all purposes. So if you want to filter to the individual, you can do that. If you want to filter to the group, you can do that. If you want to filter to the manager level, you can do that. And so having the organizational structure in that hierarchy, and then also having your correlation tables that allow the exact same dashboard to be used, whether it's a person on the ground floor working, in the operational level, or at the management level, or at the director level, or at the portfolio level. We have many different levels of leadership, and creating one viz for leadership and one viz for management and one viz for the group and the services and all this other stuff would it's really difficult. And so we really rely on correlation tables that allow us to have just simply a filter at the very top that allow them to get to the level of granularity that they need. Is that kind of what you mean, or are you thinking about the layout of the data within a dashboard? Because it really does depend on what the outcome or the action that you're trying to drive is. But generally, we rely heavily on filters, allowing people to use one viz for many different levels of the organization. And we also use data to filter. And so if you're looking at the summary level of all of the number of hours that a staff is working, I might have a box that shows green if they're working the right amount of hours per week, red if it doesn't, and then you click on that box, and then all of a sudden you see the hours that they actually worked for that week in a separate view underneath, viz underneath. So I think the summary is hiding as much data as you can, making it as simple as possible, with the ability to drill down within Viz, like within the actual dashboard.
There's a few others.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
Yeah, I'm not used to that. Yeah. Okay, so flow from. Yeah, very similar. Yeah, absolutely. We definitely rely on the F pattern. If you haven't used that, check it out. And so I would say F pattern rather than Z flow. But yes, yeah, absolutely. And then okay, that's good. And this one we answered. And just dealing with sheer volume of dashboard, what does the user see when they start with Tableau? So in Tableau, we in fact have a dashboard of dashboards that gets us down to each of the different types of dashboards. And so we've got all of our different dashboards segmented within our Tableau server. So you can get into the, immediately see the IT ones and then see all the different types. So yeah, I mean, I don't have the numbers offhand, but I'll try and find them here and send them out in the chat window. But we have probably 400 different Tableau developers and thousands of different projects that are out there. And so yeah, the segmentation is it's always a challenge, especially when you get to have so many different dashboards. But really quickly, I could show you the I'll show you just real quick what our landing page is, because this isn't really confidential, but you can get a sense of, here's your favorites, here's your recent history, ones that are recommended for you, your subscriptions, your alerts. You can go through each of the different projects. Here's all the different Get Help section that we've got. And then we've got this one for the CEO level dashboards. Here's the catalog of all the different dashboards. Then there's an executive portal strictly for executive. and then this is another section here, so you can kind of get a sense of how these things drill down. But the I think structuring your dashboard in a way that doesn't allow people to get lost is using a dashboard of dashboards is key. And Ask Data, absolutely. HS is invested in every facet. There's, with hundreds of different, 300 to 400 people using Tableau, we have a pretty strong capability, and absolutely we're using Ask Data for sure. Is there any other questions? So yeah, if anyone is interested, I certainly could, I'd be happy to share some of our dashboards. I can't show very many, but certainly this is our dashboard of dashboards for IT. You can see that when you click on the CIO reporting, you can see each of the different dashboards that are conveyed in there, nice and clean, or at least from my perspective. And the projects and then utilization, and then you can scroll through and actually see. So at a macro level, you can we've got 40-something dashboards strictly published on our portal, our IT portal, and our dashboard of dashboards, and then the Connect Care dashboard of dashboards is linked off of that dashboard, and then naturally this one allows you to get into all the dashboards that pertain to the Connect Care program. So you can see each of the different types of dashboards that you would, frankly, anyone would expect to see in the context of a really large program. Resource management, training, and then and this one, in fact, has a few external links. And so it's a nice thing with Tableau. It's really flexible. If you just have to make sure that you're being creative, and yeah. Internet of Things. What do you mean by that? We have quite a few different IoT devices, but I can't really think of too many that are actually feeding Tableau dashboards off the top of my head. We have tons of clinical devices, but for the most part, they're desktop server environments, or they're pretty fat devices. In fact, we have cloud data being ingested, and we have data from almost every kind of data database, and then so. Is there any specific IoT devices that you're interested in? Yeah, we don't. I can't think of an IoT device that I'm aware of that we're ingesting data directly from.
Maybe like an Apple Watch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or any type of monitoring devices. Like the monitoring devices typically store data into our enterprise apps, and then we do Tableau visits from the data naturally in the database, right? That the enterprise app relies on. So I don't know of any cases where we're ingesting data directly from IoT devices into Tableau. So yeah, I'm not sure of any that wouldn't go through a database or through an enterprise app. We have hundreds and hundreds of security cameras that basically we ingest video into, but the video is then processed, and there's analytics that would occur within the database, not from the IoT devices. And to be honest, we don't have a lot of IoT devices that I can think of that I'm aware of. So yeah. Any other questions? Great.
Thank you, Jesse, for speaking. A little ahead of schedule, but that's okay. We can give you guys some time to back to the rest of your day. We can probably jump to Patricia, if you're ready, Patricia.
Sure. Just give me a second to get my screen up on here. Okay, can you guys all see my screen? Yep. Okay. So hi everyone, and thank you very much to the Tableau user group for having me. I was just looking through some of the attendees and I recognized some names from the Tableau conference, from the last Tableau user group, and even people I've worked with. So hi to all of you. It's very nice to be meeting with you in this forum. So my presentation is really going to be about how AutoCanada, so the company that I work for, used Tableau to manage through COVID. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about the company. So we're a North American multi-location automobile dealership group, and we're publicly traded. So what that means is that we own 50 dealerships across Canada, and that's from coast to coast. And we also have 13 dealerships in the States. So on top of that, we own collision centers, we run finance and insurance, and have other kind of ancillary profit centers. But our primary assets and our primary business is running dealerships and selling cars. We represent many different brands. So you can think of it as, you know, each brand is basically its own franchise. And so we own many, many different franchises across the country. So we're also the only publicly listed auto dealership group in Canada. So a little bit, just to give you guys a little bit of context, I only started this job, which is running the business intelligence team in AutoCanada, at the beginning of February. So I haven't been here for very long, and certainly my time here has really been a trial by fire. When I came on, I met the team. This is myself and the team. We've since then also added another team member. And I spent the first 3 weeks or so interviewing various stakeholders across the company, trying to figure out really, you know, what's going on, get a feel for the landscape. It really resonated with me when Jesse was saying, like, find the pain points, because that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to find the pain points, and then you take that back from an operational perspective, and then you take that back and you try to figure out how you can get people what it is that they need. So at the end of these interviews with stakeholders and flying around the country and talking to people, the team and I had an intensive 2-day strategy and team building workshop where we came up with a why statement, and also to the values that are really going to drive our work. Because I think it's foundational to understand what it is, why we're all here, right? What it is, we're not here just to implement the newest and the shiniest technology. We really need to understand why at the core we're doing the work that we're doing, and we need to understand ourselves. So we did some personality assessment exercises, and we discovered through them that that one of our primary motivators as a group was that we really wanted to help people you know, do their work well. So this was great. You know, we had our vision statement, we'd established what our driving values were. We had a strategic plan. You know, it was all good. We're going to present it to the executives, and then COVID hit. So I think at first nobody really realized what this thing was. At first, I think we were all looking at it, and it impacted people in that, you know, you shouldn't travel. If you were planning something for spring break, it was probably better to stay home. People were more worried about losing airplane tickets and having the annoyance of shifting flights from WestJet and wondering whether or not they were going to be able to go, you know, wherever they were planning to go in the next month or two. And then very quickly it became apparent that this was not going to be anything that any of us had experienced in the recent past. So for us, what that required really was to pivot away from the data strategy aspect of what we were about to do towards tactical current information required for business units to make agile decisions. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of intuition for people to realize that if nobody's going anywhere, people are going to be losing their jobs all over the place, and the whole country is shutting down, and half the world is shutting down, that the demand for vehicles is probably going to fall. So the good thing about going into this crisis was that as a team, we had a solid foundation. We'd done the strategy and team building work, and we really realized where we were, what was driving us. So when the company decided that the dealerships were going to stay open and adapt rather than close, and the operations team at head office here in Edmonton decided to stay and support those dealerships, we decided to stay and support them as well. So intelligence and research showed that the experience of intelligence and the experience of car manufacturers in China earlier in the year indicated that what we were looking for would be a very sharp, hopefully only V-shaped economic shock with an 80% of decline in revenue at its trough. So we were looking at an 80% we were looking at going into a hole that at its bottom would mean that the company was operating at 20% of its revenues compared to what it would have been normally. So of course that changes everything. People across the country chose different strategies and methods for dealing with it. Some places were extremely conservative and buckled down and decided that they need to save money and shut everything down. Our auto group decided that what we were going to do is, if we were going into an economic shock, we would be the last ones in, which meant keeping the dealerships and service shop opens and adapting very quickly to an online sale environment, to contactless everything, and to a delivery-based reality. Also, this meant that we needed to monitor key indicators daily and be extremely agile in how we responded to the changing landscape, because nobody knew it was going to happen, and agility was the key. And also, we wanted to be the first ones out of the shock. So it's one thing going into a shock, knowing that you're going to lose the vast majority of your revenue and not being sure for how long that's going to happen, and needing to make decisions such as laying off people, such as purchase of inventory and other major decisions. But there's also the reality of, like, when were you going to come out of it? And when was it time to ramp up again? When was it time to start marketing again? When was it time to start rehiring people? And so I think the leadership at the company decided that if we could be the last ones in and the first ones out, and if we could learn as many lessons as we can and take this time in order to permanently improve processes and the way we approach business, then we had a good chance of surviving this in the long term and hopefully becoming better as a result. So a problem to solve was, how are we going to see that? How are we going to be able to see? We knew now we were in the shock. How are we going to see when we were going to be coming out of the shock? And how are we going to be able to respond that so that we can begin ramping up our staffing and our operations? So what we did when it became apparent that this was serious and that many, many decisions were going to have to be made and that we needed to be agile, is we went to the drawing board with a number of stakeholders throughout the organization. Luckily, in a way, because so many people were working from home, the people that were at the office, there was a core group of people who stayed at the office, most of them in different aspects of operations, marketing, or HR. And so there was a small but kind of intimate group of people that were working on things. And so it was easier for us to get this cross-departmental collaboration, because literally all we had to do was walk around the office and ask for a group of people to come and gather around a whiteboard where we hashed out what it was that these people from all of these different departments needed to know that day in order to help them make decisions that would get us all through this. And so what happened is we came up with this concept of having a pulse dashboard. So I'll just switch my screen from I'll switch my screen onto the screen where I'm going to show you some of the stuff that we built out in Tableau in order to help us do that. So the 10 indicators that people from across the organizations came up with as the most important ones in order to help them measure the pulse of what is happening were gathered together and put into a dashboard. And here you can see, and this tells you a little bit about the flavor of the business. So looking at website users and internet leads, looking at how many people were making appointments to show up to dealerships and how many people were keeping those appointments, looking at vehicles sold and, new, used, others, and a bunch of other factors to that. And then how many people were calling to book appointments for service, and how many people were making appointments for service, how many repair orders were being opened. And then on top of it, we had dealerships. Every single one of our dealerships each day would put in what their finances were for that day. So we had asked them all to calculate how much did they need every single day in order to break even. And then at the end of the day, they would put in where they were at so we could see, so we could gauge where we were at in terms of whether certain dealerships were making their break even or not. And so this dashboard, although it looks simple, actually gets pretty in-depth. We've got a ton of different filters up here, which lets you look at, so this looks at the last nine days. So if we look at the last 80 days, covering the COVID period, you can really see how, we've gone into this hole and then we started coming back out. So you can really see a dip in almost all the indicators. And because we only started having people fill in this break even sometime along the way, you can see that for a while we were not even getting close, and only kind of coming into the second part of May, we started to come out of this in some way. So this dashboard was very operations focused. It was something that was being monitored by every single dealer can find their own dealerships on a list and look at where their own dealership is at on that. Executives can look at it at a rolled up level, aggregating it for the groups that they're responsible for of dealerships. And it proved to be one of the top 3 views of all time in terms of our Tableau dashboard. So just to give you some context, we've got about 400 Tableau users throughout the company, where we've got that's about 10% of our employees, roughly. And we've got about 130 different dashboards. So this rapidly became one of the most popular views. So building off of this, we were still like, okay, so this is great. This helps us look at things on a daily basis, and helps people monitor certain key indicators. But what about the whole picture? How are we going to be able to gauge when demand starts to rebound? How are we going to be able to know when we've hit the bottom of that economic shock, when we're in the trough? So what we came up with is this visualization that I'll show you here. And this visualization takes those same indicators, which are used by people throughout the company in order to gauge the health of various aspects of the business. And we created a visualization which compares it to year on year. So it compares it to the previous year. So if you look from the beginning of January to now, wherever we're at, the 26th of May, which this is showing, it shows that the start of the year was pretty good on most indicators. Anything that's gray and going into the blues means the same or better as that same weekday of the year before. And then you can see COVID very vividly in terms of when the shock happened. What's interesting is that some indicators led into that. So people, as soon as there was any kind of uncertainty within the economy, people backed off from buying new cars. So that was one of our leading indicators that showed that something was not, that all was not well. Because in February already, people kind of backed off from buying new cars, and then they really basically completely stopped. So we had, some of our worst days. As you can see, we had, 92% decline in year-on-year sales, 85%. So that 80% bottom, that was here. So that was end of March, most of April, really. And then the repair orders were slower to go in. So people were still taking their cars in to get fixed. But by the end of March, they kind of stopped, but not as much as they stopped buying new cars, because if your car breaks, you're still taking it in. So that's parts and service. In terms of used car sales, so they people also at a really similar time stopped buying used cars, but they recovered much, much quicker. So we saw people going and starting to buy new cars like second half of April. We were really coming out of the trough on that one. And iLeads, which are internet leads, which are leads who got through the internet, really didn't get impacted much at all, because this was the period where we adapted to that online reality and started, and now it's stronger than ever that we've got people who are accustomed to more to that online buying environment, and who are coming in and looking for cars through that route. Same with appointments. So people stopped making appointments in March, and then they also stopped showing up to appointments. But they started showing up to appointments they made earlier than they started making more appointments. But this was a good indicator going into that as well. So I love this visualization because it really shows that funnel. It also shows that some things are much slower to recover than other things. So now we know what things to look for in terms of leading indicators for when things are getting bad or when things are getting good. What's also really interesting, and I'll show this to you guys because this was one of the things that struck me about this, not so much for our own company, but just giving a little bit of a picture for the country as a whole. So when I was flicking through and looking at things by province, I looked at Alberta, and I thought, whoa, Alberta has been leading, our leading indicator, which are the new car sales, have been bad for most of this year. And same with the service ROs. So Alberta, it's like the crisis started a lot earlier than COVID. This map is a lot more orange than the general one, compared to, for example, Ontario, which was very blue. So you can, I think these visualizations are interesting for anybody who's interested in just macroeconomic realities across the province, because this is in a stark contrast to what we saw in Alberta. So unfortunately for someone living in Alberta, that's a little bit depressing, because it means that we are absolutely going into some tough times. But I think it's just interesting. I think this way of visualizing it is interesting in terms of looking at something like a shock. So another thing that we had to do in order to help us manage through the crisis, is we had to get really good at maintaining our cash flow. So we took out any actual numbers here, but this was another dashboard where we pulled some people around a whiteboard and asked them, like, what is it that you absolutely need to know, and what can you chase down in terms of being able to help you manage your cash better? Because when people were not making enough to break even, when they're making decisions that involve laying people off, that involve shutting down parts of their operations, they really need to have a good understanding of how much money they have in the bank. So this dashboard, while maybe not looking as flashy or impressive as some of the other ones, was actually a triumph from another level, because one of the challenges that we have is that because we're an agglomeration of dealerships, so we've pulled them in, we've bought them over time, and we've added to this group. People have their own systems throughout the country, so we're dealing with a lot of different applications that we need to pull data from. But not only that, we're also dealing with some applications which don't allow us to see anything at an enterprise level, where we have to, and one of them is some of our banking applications that we use, where we have to log in and log out of each dealership in a very painful way to pull in the necessary information. So what we did is this really accelerated our robotic process automation, if you will, and we ended up getting through some of these challenges once we realized what information people needed. And what they needed was, how much cash do we have in the bank, which was this? How much cash do we have in the accounting system, which is this? How many vehicles are not on floor plan, which in the auto industry basically means that they're not on a cheaper line of credit that is provided to us through a special arrangement or through a special portion of the banks that we deal with. And it's problematic because you want this number, so this red thing to be zero, because you want all of that to be on that cheaper line of credit, and it's a cash flow indicator, or it helps you manage your working capital. So without getting into too much of the accounting stuff, the other stuff comes for the most part out of the accounting system. But here the challenge is that in order for us to be able to know which vehicles were on this line of credit versus weren't, in a way that let us splice and dice and aggregate in this Tableau workbook that would satisfy everybody from the dealers to the presidents, we had to build some bots to go in and log into all of these banking portals and pull in from each dealership account the necessary information, and then place it into our database where we could then incorporate it. So after we managed to do that, now we've just been inundated by requests throughout the organization to develop bots, and that's what we're doing. And the thing that was great about this is that prior to this exercise, there wasn't a huge amount of buy-in for the robotic process automation. People thought that that was just like something that the nerds over in the data department were talking about. They weren't seeing any immediate application for these bots. And this ended up really pushing that agenda forward. So the last dashboard that I'm going to show you that helped us manage through this crisis is the compensation and productivity dashboard. So because of the incredible hit that you saw in this heat map to our business, hours needed to be cut, and we needed to lay off a considerable amount of people in order to be able to keep the dealerships afloat. So what that meant is that everybody went on the kind of, not everybody, but everybody who was identified for layoff went initially on a temporary layoff. And then as the business started to rebound, we were looking at recalling people. And then it became, well, how do we recall people, and how can we, given that what we were trying to do throughout this crisis is not just manage the crisis, but manage it in such a way that we were going to be able to come out of this better and stronger. So the decision and the discussion ended up being, okay, instead of just looking at how do we bring people back, how can we take that as an opportunity to get pay plans in line into where they should? Because like what happens when you buy businesses from all over the place, there's people's salaries and their compensations end up being all over the place as well. And so this was an exercise where it was, okay, let's look at 2019. So we're looking at a time that was pre-shock. Let's look at each dealership and let's assess their productivity, and let's assess what their administrative costs are per car. And what their efficiency is. And so we came up with 3 different metrics: a productivity, an efficiency, and a cost-effective metric for a variety of different administrative positions. So we got a bunch of all of the administrative positions in dealerships, and then we looked at the efficiency and cost-effectiveness and productivity of that dealership. So really what that meant is, can that dealership can the dealership that, for example, is performing here on all of these indicators, can they afford to be paying people up here? Like, no, they probably can't. And since we're not going to go back into a situation where we're at 100% of whatever we were, at 100% of what we're supposed to be anytime soon, this would be the time to align those costs. So we developed this dashboard. And on it, you can pick a dealership, and I took the dealership names off for the purposes of this presentation. So you can pick a dealership, say dealership number 8. You can pick a position. So, okay, well, these guys don't have that position. So you can pick a dealership, and then you can pick their position, and you can see, okay, they've got 3 sales desk managers, and we can see that the median pay across the auto group is $135,000. And again, we've anonymized these dashboards, and we've put in some things to make it so that what you're seeing are not actual numbers. So, but in this case, your median is 135,000, and then you've got so one sales desk manager makes exactly what the group median is, and then the other 2 are in the top quartile. Then you would look and you would say, well, but productivity, they're close to the bottom. They're in the bottom quartile for efficiency. They're in the bottom quartile for cost effectiveness, and they're low on productivity. So can they afford to keep paying these people top quartile wages? And the answer would be for whatever general manager was making adjustments to pay plan or recalling people or having conversations with employees about, what their future was with the company. So this was a tool that allowed them to see whether their pay plans were in line with their output and their productivity. So those were the dashboards that I wanted to show you. Let me just go back to my presentation. Yeah, and so to summarize, I think I'm sorry, I'm now totally rolling too far. So I think what are our success factors? And I guess before we get into the success factors, I'll tell you what we considered a success. So all of these dashboards, every one of them required tapping into data sources that we didn't have or we didn't have organized. So the team really had to be creative and innovative in order to be able to allow us to tap into that, to tap into those sources. And so, you know, the fact that we were able to come up with this output as a very small team in a very short amount of time, literally over just a couple of weeks, was considered a huge success, I think, by the team. And the bigger success is that we really got buy-in from people. We really used this as an opportunity to get buy-in from the people at an operations level. So we dug in, we got our hands dirty, we got in there, we pulled in people, and we really, I think, increased our standing within the company in terms of what people were paying attention to as a result of this work that we were able to do. And so the success factors, I think, that allowed us to do that, one was being present. It did help that we were all here and not working from home, because, which of course we were only really able to do that because a lot of other people went and worked from home, and we were not putting ourselves or anybody in danger by coming to work, or much, I guess. But the ability to be present and the ability to collaborate with internal stakeholders in the way that you're only able to do when there's not very many people around, and when people are all are galvanized with a mission. And so I think being here and the collaboration that happened in order to pull all of these dashboards together, to pull these disparate data sources together, to get the ideas and to become as helpful as we had wanted to be in our vision statement, that involved collaborating and iterating and using even the dealers as a way to QC our work. Things would come out. The president was having weekly calls with every single general manager of each dealership across the company. Every time there was updates on what the BI team was doing, and people would go on to these dashboards. We'd put them out and we'd QC it through basically utilization, and we would iterate and make things better. So that was definitely a success factor. And the innovation, we came up with some bots, we came up with some unique ways in order to pull from data sources that we didn't know or hadn't really investigated in pulling, and just being part of the solution, making sure that the BI team was part of the solution and not off to the side, that we were, right in the middle of whatever decisions were being made. So I think a crisis too, there's that Winston Churchill quote that's been flying around, which says, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that at least for our little BI department and our, here at our company, we certainly tried not to do that. So that's my presentation for today. I'm open to, any questions suggestions. You know, if you want to send me money or love letters, I'm always game for that as well. That was a joke, guys. Somebody asked a question now.
We can start laughing. That's awesome. Good job, Patricia. That's really good. Really well done.
Jesse here, with so many different stakeholders, how do you engage all of them? And I guess, is there kind of a meetings that they have, or is it typically the top leadership that you would work with?
You know what? Honestly, what really helps is that I report directly to the CEO of the organization. And that hadn't been the case in my previous jobs, and it makes such a huge difference, because that ability to have that connection with that executive leadership, you know, opens a lot of doors. But what we really like, for me and my nature and my working style, is very much just to grab people and bring them in. You know, I do laps around the office like 5 times a day, and whatever issues I have with people, like if I have a question or if I have something, like I'll just walk over and talk to them, or I'll just call them. I try not to rely on email too much, because, and I encourage my team members to do the same. So, you know, we would be talking each morning. We have a huddle, and we talk about what the progress is and what the items are outstanding. And I encourage people, if they're saying something like, oh, I'm waiting for so-and-so to get back to me, or I'm waiting for whatever, we'll call that person, like, or go to their office. Just ask, and it doesn't matter. If they're direct, it doesn't matter. And people will get used to you doing that, and then then they respond. I don't know, is that what you meant, or?
Absolutely, thank you.
Sorry, my headphones just died, so I just had to switch to using the speaker on my phone.
Again, if anybody had questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom. Great presentation, Patricia.
Oh, that was really good.
Thank you.
Really cool stuff that you're doing over there at Auto Canada.
You know, you guys had Mike Ferret from Auto Canada present at your Tableau user group about a year and some ago. And that's where I met him. And it was actually through the Tableau user group, through this forum, that I ended up coming into this position. It was because I had met Mike and watched him present at the Tableau user group and saw the cool stuff that he was doing at Auto Canada, all of which has been foundational in terms of you know, the team now being able to go forward and do the cool stuff that we're doing. Was, you know, the fact that me seeing that was what had attracted me to this company and this position. So that's a little plug for Tableau user group.
It's a great plug.
Hey, Patricia, how do you guys handle access in your organization? Do all staff have access to all visualizations?
No, all staff don't have access to all visualizations. We've got when we have our online, let me just see, I'll open it and then I'll see if I can just kind of show you.
I always find it interesting how some organizations lock data down completely, and then others open it up completely, and then there's kind of some that are right in the middle. And
you know what? I think we're we're probably more towards that open data concept because we want to be as transparent of an organization as possible. So, and also like what we find is that, I mean, being in the private sector, what you want to do is you want to drive productivity, efficiency, and a lot of that gets done through competition. So us publishing as much data as possible for dealerships all across the country and having people being able to constantly compare themselves to what other people are doing is, I think, a big driver in them wanting to improve their processes. So we have a lot of data that's, like, a lot of our data is very open. In terms of management, because, you know, we're not dealing with thousands of users, we're dealing with a couple of hundred, and they're in pretty specific job types. What we do is we have a bunch of different folders within our Tableau online account, each of which has a standard set of permissions. So for example, something that goes to the controllers or something that goes to the general managers, it immediately assigns the access for that group. And you can alter that as the creator and the uploader of the workbook if you're one of the admins, which only the people in our department are, if you want to add somebody else. But that's kind of our default way of managing that. So we just stick it in a folder where for an intended audience. But I mean, for this kind of stuff, like the stuff that we showed you, everyone in the organization that's on Tableau can access that.
That's great.
Yeah. Hins, I think it's that time in the afternoon where everybody needs to go and get a little bit of sugar to get them through the rest. So I propose, unless there's any burning questions, maybe we take a little break.
Yeah, let's take a 10 minutes, and we'll reconvene.
Sounds good.
Let's meet back at about 2:40 or 2:50 or 2:45, 2:50. Let's do 2:50 more time.
Sounds good.
Hello, is anybody back?
I never left. Still here.
We are.
Great. All right.
I work from home. I don't have very far to go. And Hans, you probably don't have far to go either. It looks like you're working from the kitchen.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's, it's 2:51, so we can probably just go ahead. So we got Randy and Shane from Tableau that are next to speak. Go ahead if you guys are ready to share your screen.
Can you see my screen, Hans?
No, not yet.
All right, let's try that again.
No.
Share. Share. It says I'm sharing. Let's try that one more
Oh,
time.
do you have to move it over to the other? Oh, there you go. It's
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, you got it.
Which screen am I hearing here? Can you see impact of data?
Impact of data, yep.
Blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good. All right. So welcome everyone, and hey, great job, Jesse and Patricia. That was awesome. Really cool seeing how you guys are using data to make a difference inside your organizations. So it's a good segue from what Patricia was talking about and what Auto Canada has been able to do with their data to understand how they're going to get back to work, how they're going to do it safely, and how they're going to do it with growth on the other side. And as we enter into this new normal, there's been a lot of things that have been said, with Deloitte, McKinsey, and Forrester. One of the things that I read from McKinsey that's on the screen right now is that as we emerge from COVID and from this pandemic, I think we all can assume that things aren't going to look exactly the same as what we entered. One of the things that we have heard is that data analytics and data are going to be front and center and be even more important as organizations get back to work and try to come out on the other side as a healthy organization. So what I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about today is just talk a little bit about a couple of highlights of what we've been trying to do with our community, our data community, and of course with our customers. Because as we do emerge from this data or this pandemic, talent and having those data skills to be able to analyze that data in a quick fashion, help your organization, and to be able to be data literate is going to be increasingly important. So one of the quotes that I've seen, there's so many, but one that kind of stuck out for me is that those organizations that have been least impacted by the COVID are really data organizations. I mean, yes, a lot of them were born in data. If you look at technology companies like Google and Facebook, and so on and so forth, and Zoom, for example. But those organizations that are really data-driven are going to really emerge quicker, but they're also going to grow a lot faster. So how can we help support our community and support our customers knowing that? So one of the things that I wanted to show, and many may already understand that this is available to them, but we made an announcement about 6 to 7 weeks ago that our Tableau e-learning platform is free for 90 days. So as soon as you sign up, you'll have 90 days of free e-learning. The curriculum is there. I'm going to go through that really quickly, as well as that if you can get a Tableau certification, it's now 50% off. So we're allowing those individuals that are trying to up their data skills to be able to access the content they require in order to do so. And I know that Patricia and team also over at Auto Canada is taking advantage of this. And I'll show you one quick dashboard that one of our companies and one of our customers is really taking advantage of the Tableau e-learning program as well. I'll kind of go through that really quickly. But why would you do that? Just some of the impact and the customer value that e-learning is driving. Besides the fact that you're going to up your skills, up the ability to analyze data and use Tableau. But some of the, we've had e-learning now for about 18 months. We did make a change in the announcement at TC that we'll talk about, TC being our last Tableau conference in Las Vegas, where we pivoted it from more of a less of a curriculum to more of a role-based training program. But those that have taken it have absolutely done an amazing job. It is self-paced, but it covers such a broad range. And the individuals that have gone through these courses have definitely been able to do a lot more with Tableau than they ever had before. So as I mentioned, we went from a curriculum-based training course where you could take Desktop 1, Desktop 2, and then Advanced Desktop 3 courses with a subscription to e-learning. But what we've done is we announced a role-based learning path for all our users. So it really helped you boost your productivity within the Tableau skill set. So we have curriculums now. We have up to 12 different roles that you can take. You can take a skills assessment to understand exactly where you might fit. So you can actually go online and say, what am I looking for? And then at the end of each curriculum, you have a skills assessment that you need to pass 80%, and you get an actual badge, a digital badge that you can take with you. I've noticed a ton of badges being displayed on LinkedIn recently as we launch this program. So there's a ton of people that are looking at really upping their data skills with digital badges in this program. So just to kind of a little bit deeper, what does it look like? What will you have access to when you log in? You'll be able to actually take your analyst course, which would really encompasses a ton of content. So that's really desktop 1 to desktop 3. You can become a site administrator. You also can look at becoming a developer. So again, there's up to 12 paths there. Do be aware that 4 of them will require you to take classroom training. So those are more like server architecture and server administrator type classes and data scientist courses. But those ones are the only ones that will actually require outside classroom training in order to go through the complete curriculum. But there are 8 free courses in there that you can take and earn badges. So all you need to do is Google Tableau e-learning. You'll see this screen, and then you just need to enter your access code 2020 e-learning and go to town and start learning with the curriculum. So it is pretty simple. You'll be able to see which courses you want to take. I encourage everyone to look at the roles that they might want to assume, go through it. You can actually see what those courses are before you jump in, and then go from there. So again, this is how you log in. We'll need to create a persona, so you'll need to log in and sign up as a Tableau user. As soon as you do that, then you create your account, and away you go. Just a quick example of, we have launched some programs with the likes of Auto Canada. This one's a big telecommunications company out of Calgary. Won't name names, might give it away, but what they've done is they really have adopted this. They had 170 people sign up for e-learning right now, and so far 40 of those have attained badges, 117 badges altogether, which is a ton of content that they've been able to go through. And many of these are new to Tableau, many of these users. So really trying to get the most out of their downtime or their time that they're working from home to learn as much as they can about Tableau and data. So that's one of the things I wanted to highlight, as well as this is more related to what Patricia's conversation was. We launched Salesforce, which is our parent company, launched work.com, and I'll show that really quickly. But also we're providing a lot of access to data. So I know Patricia talked a lot about internal data. We had a call with an airline company this morning that's looking at bringing a ton of external data sources together so they can actually understand how and when they're going to best recover once the economy turns around, once people get back to work. So they've created what they call their recovery dashboard that executives are using to make decisions across the organization on where they should fly, when they should fly, how many people will they need, so on and so forth. And a lot of that data, what they're now looking at is to bring it in from our data hub that we've allowed and provisioned for users to use. So as we know, in crisis, we turn to data. We probably see that every day if you look at Alberta Health or across Canada, in terms of everyone's concerned about the numbers, how many people are hospitalized in ICU, how many people are been diagnosed on a daily basis. All we hear on a daily basis, every time you turn the channel, is we're hearing about data. But how are we using that data to make things better? When we look at it from Salesforce and Tableau's perspective, there's 3 components that we really looked at are important in a crisis that's really impacting us. Of course, public health, as we know, there's economic crisis, and of course, the business. How is everybody, there's no one unfazed with what's going on in our environment. So again, we're listening to our customers. 3 things that we look at that are really important for companies to get back to work is stabilizing the company, reopening, and how are you going to do it in a safe manner? And then how are you going to continue business as usual to become profitable and grow that business? So we've been able to try to understand how they're using data to make these decisions, and how they're using data to be better on the back end of this crisis. Just quickly going to show you this. This is again the three components. There's a ton of content here. I'm not going to go through it all, but some of our great customers are doing amazing things in each of these components that I can share, and I'll show you where you would go and access these dashboards. They're all free to you, and you can take a look. Actually, a lot of cases you can download that data, and we'll show you that really quickly as well. But the one thing that Salesforce created, believe it or not, in 6 weeks, they created a whole new software package for organizations to be able to go back to work in a safe manner. So looking at spacing on your offices, how are you going to actually utilize an elevator? When should you phase in you back to work, and what data is accessible to you? So if anybody's curious, I'm not going to go through it today, but work.com is a great platform for those organizations looking to go, how am I going to get back to work safely, and how am I going to take care of my employees? But what I did want to focus on is the data side, since that's the type of company we are. So looking at the data hub that's accessible for everybody, I'm just going to see if I can bring it up here for you real quick. It's got a ton of great content. Today, I'm going to go to it right here. So today we've got, can you see my screen still? I'll get the thumbs up. Sometimes it doesn't work when I click over.
Yeah, I can still see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So today, since January 1st, we've had, believe it or not, 19,356 COVID-19 related visits on Tableau Public. So we've kind of taken the best of the best and provided them for you in a manner where you can actually access them and go through them if you need. I mean, a lot of it is either global or US based, but there's a ton of content here in terms of government, healthcare, and public health. Lots of stuff in terms of global cases. You know, if I look at this one, for example, you can actually bring it right back down as it loads, sorry. You can break that right down to the province level. So if you are looking at some dashboards, you can take it to Canada and do that, and then you can break it down per province. So it depends on what you like to look at, but there's a ton of great content out here to be able to understand how we're breaking down. If I just wanted to drill it down to Alberta, but there's a ton of great stuff out there for everybody to access. But some of the things I wanted to show you specifically is that you can actually get right down to the data. So what we really wanted to do, it's great to be able to see visualizations, but they might not be effective for what you're looking to, the questions that you're looking to answer. But what you can do is you can actually go right down to our data hub and access the data sources that we're provisioning to our clients to make the best decisions possible. And culminating all this data so you can actually access it in a manner that's consumable to you. So really we're giving you the ability to download either the workbooks that you see here or using the data sets that we're bringing together for you to access for free. So there's a data hub listing. We're also provisioning, and a lot of people ask me, so that's great, but do I have to refresh this all the time? We're actually using MuleSoft, which is one of our Salesforce partners. Our partners are part of our family to help automate this approach. So this data can be automated for you so that you can pull it into a visualization or pull it into some of the analysis you're doing. So just want to make that available to you so you understand that not just the workbooks that are available, but the data itself and the underlying data is accessible for you to leverage as you go forward. There are some great things that some of our local organizations are doing. So the city of Edmonton has a dashboard that they're looking at this on their website. I believe it's under the COVID data dashboards. So you can see a bunch of things here that they're looking at. You can open the dashboard, which I have done here. So for those in the city of Edmonton, they've got a board here. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of data because city of Edmonton seemed to come out of it pretty unscathed compared to the rest of Alberta. But they still are analyzing on a daily basis, and they do update this data daily in terms of how they're being impacted throughout the Edmonton zone. So you can see there was a spike, but their spike at 46 cases was something I think we had on the weekend down here in Calgary. Also, a great one is the city of Edmonton, and the reason I think this is important because it's really being utilized a lot. There's almost one.
City of Toronto.
City of Toronto.
Sorry.
Did I see Edmonton again?
You said Edmonton.
What the heck? Gets caught on Edmonton. Thanks for pointing that out. But this has been viewed in the last 6 weeks over 1.2 million times. So it's really being utilized by a lot of businesses and a lot of people in Ontario that are or in the city of Toronto and the area. So again, a ton of great content and one of Brandy's colleagues helped build this with the city of Edmonton in mind. So, and again, it's being used a ton. You can also download that data as well if required to make a decision. Also did want to point out, and many may have seen this, but Deloitte has got more of an economic dashboard. Again, also on that COVID data hub, they're analyzing the impact of this pandemic on health on Canada, and also using a lot of different tools to monitor and measure the economic recovery and the sentiment exactly and the commercial traffic throughout the organization. So a ton of great data to really understand the impact of what's going on and where it's really impacting us the most. So go back to the presentation. A couple more things. I did talk a little bit about the City of Edmonton, so you can go there and check it out. I did talk about the Toronto Public Health as well, but there is a ton of great contact there. I mean, if anybody watches CNN, you know that Andrew Cuomo goes through a lot of this stuff on a daily basis, but our team helped work with his team to help bring all that data together so he can report on it on a daily basis. So it's great teamwork between our customers and our organization to really help support the community and our customers out there. But again, I'm not going to go through everything too detailed because I want to make sure I leave some time for what Randy's going through. But at the end of the day, please take some time, go through it, and I hope you find some things there that will be able to help you all get back to work safe. And with that, I will stop sharing, and we're on our way.
Great.
You ready?
And
Awesome.
yeah, I'll switch over to share my screen. I don't know if you want to pause for any questions while I just get myself sorted out here. Share. Okay, what do you guys, hold on, let me just go like this. Okay, do you guys see a PowerPoint?
That we do.
Don't worry, only one slide. Okay, and you guys can hear me all right, obviously.
Yes, really good.
Perfect. Okay, great. So what I thought I'd do today with you guys, thanks for everyone who's still hanging on here. Presentation is not too long. I did want to cover a couple of pretty great features that we have that came out in 2020.2. So I believe 2020.2 came out about a month ago, I want to say. And then yesterday there was a maintenance release that came out too. So people are pretty excited, especially if they want to upgrade to the latest version, but they want to wait for obviously that first maintenance release. So we have a couple clients that are jumping on board that. Some of the features are just, you know, to warn you guys, some of the features that are in this release build on existing features. So I'll do my best just to kind of give you a recap of what those features might be in case you're not leveraging them. And then I'll obviously build upon that. The first one that I did want to start with is it's a heavy hitter. So we've been working on this for, gosh, it feels like since I joined the company. So I want to say almost 4 years ago, 3 years ago for sure, we started working on relationships. So relationships are, so we're enhancing Tableau's data model with new capabilities to help customers more easily analyze data across multiple tables and different levels of detail without having to learn, you know, advanced database concepts or write custom SQL code. So creating relationships between tables makes analyzing data stored in common data warehouse schemas like Star and Snowflake more easy. So Tableau will handle multiple levels of detail in a single data source, making it easy to slice and dice data without writing specialized calculations to control level of detail. And since these enhanced data sources can answer a wide variety of questions, organizations will be able to consolidate the number of distinct data sources that they create and maintain. So I know that was kind of a long preamble, but what I'll do here is, obviously it's kind of showing in motion here, but I'll just give you a quick demo of one use case that I see quite often. So hopefully you guys can still see my screen. Shane, I don't know if you want to give me the Yes, this looks okay.
Yeah, looks good. Yeah, no.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So now I'm just in Tableau desktop quickly. And I just want to look at a specific challenge here. So, you know, there are challenges that arise when joining tables of data in Tableau, how it currently exists pre-2020.2. So let's just take a quick, easy example. So here we're looking at London population data from a single table. So I have this population table here showing me London's population. Now, suppose I now want to analyze crimes per capita, which is coming from a different, oh, did I delete it? No. Hopefully I have it in here. Sorry, hold on. I might have removed it by accident. Oh, no, there it is. Okay. So maybe we want to add in more data from a different data source, which gives us kind of the crimes per capita. So in former versions of Tableau Desktop, I'm just going to double click on this, which gives me the former data modeling window here. I would simply add my crimes to the data set there. And I have my join that's automatically found something to match on. And, you know, we have our crimes data and there we go. But note that if I'm doing a join that's effectively a one-to-many, I'm going to end up with duplicated data. So if I look on the right-hand side here, so this is joining on, I forget what they call it. It's kind of like postal code data. Oh, my mouse isn't working here. Regardless, the join there is actually on this LSOA code, which is effectively like a postal code. And what you'll notice here is that based on this code, now I'm getting this duplication of population. And then when I go to my population now, my London population, instead of being 8.8 million, it's actually tripled, not even tripled, this is more than that. It's effectively ballooned based on the join that I had on hand in my data source table here. So let me just go back here and show you what this now will look like with new relationships in 2020.2. So I'm just going to remove this guy. And then I'm going to take us back to the front table here. Okay, so now I'm going to add in my crimes. And you'll see that there's this new noodle thing here. So now I'm going to drag in my crimes again. It's going to automatically sense my connection here. But note that I'm not defining any type of join. So think of relationships. Relationships are like contracts. They indicate that if you were to analyze these tables together, you would join on those fields, but the join is then deferred to analysis time. So relationships generate like a dynamic contextual join. So now if I go to my relationships table, I have those two tables that are joined, but because I'm only leveraging data from that one table, it's still going to preserve my population to be the right number. I know it's a lot to wrap your head around, especially if you haven't seen relationships yet, but I'll give you another example too here. And note that we have tons of resources on this, even as solutions engineers. I think we had about 8 hours of on-hand training around relationships itself. So it kind of takes a bit to get your mind around. Okay, so I'm going to look at another data source here, and let's just go to the window for it. And it's effectively a data source that's kind of already been built out for us here. So what happens here? So now we can create rich data sources like this guy, so like this Area 360 model, relating multiple facts about each area. So property sales and crimes cannot be directly joined in this guy because there's nothing to match them on. However, they can be indirectly related through the area that they belong to. So this is a multi-fact data source with many-to-many relationships. So the power of an analytics platform is not just obviously the beautiful visualizations that we create, but also the computation that generates the data for the visualization. So this is kind of another model that we're demoing here. So I'm just going to show you kind of another example of how this works. So this is kind of our pre-aggregation, the way we used to do it versus how we're doing it now. So we'll walk through this. So I'm just going to show you a comparison of two two identical visualizations here, each built on a single data source with and without relationships. So this viz shows for each local authority, the average property price versus crimes per capita. So this is showing that crime is more common or prevalent in wealthy areas. And if I actually click on the underlying data for my old model here for Westminster, you'll notice that, so this pre-aggregated data source, what you'll see is the summary data is the underlying data. So there's only one record per area. So all the crime data is collapsed or aggregated into a single count field. And from, and from properties, there's a pre-computed price measure to every level of detail we want to analyze, since averages are non-additive. So super unflexible, very purpose-built for this analysis, because past this, you can't drill in anymore. You can't slice and dice. It is what it is. That's, the number is what it is. But okay, on the right-hand side, so this is my viz here. So if I actually click on Westminster with my new relationship model here, let me go to the detail. So now we've preserved all of that raw detail for each individual crime. And we have, you know, another table that has the detail for my property sales or my housing sales. So all of this is preserved as it should be with new relationships. Not only that, now I can actually start slicing and dicing the data as well, right? So I can actually go down to whatever, burglary and detached. And now I have, you know, I have automatically generated dynamic queries that were previously hard-coded in this other guy here. So a lot more flexibility around building out analytics and not having to worry about things like data duplication. So it's really kind of revolutionized the way that people are able to interact and leverage data, especially for those who maybe aren't technical by trade, but they still want to be able to play around and add in data. So that's all I'll say about relationships right now. Again, a really heavy topic. We have tons of material on it. And I'm also, I should say, I'm also happy to provide this workbook so people can play around with it if you're looking for that as well.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question somebody asked. Would this
Yeah.
be the same as data blending?
No. So data blending, data blending is effectively something that you do within inside the pane, and you're effectively fixing one table for the level of granularity in another table. So it's only again, it's not flexible. It's sitting on whatever level of detail that you define in advance, and then you build visualizations off of that. Does that kind of make sense? Or did I explain that high level enough?
Agreed. Yeah. Nope. You got the answer.
Oh, sorry. It's a little bit quiet there. I'll just turn my volume up.
No, all good. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Great. Okay, so something else that's pretty cool that I don't think a lot of people leverage. So set actions. So this is actually an improvement on our original set actions, which I think we'd introduced in some version of 2019. So just kind of taking you back here for a second. So recall, so a lot of people would use set actions to let your audience interact directly with a viz or a dashboard to control aspects of their analysis. So when someone selects a mark in the view, set actions can then change the value in a set. So effectively, set actions take an existing set and update the values contained in that set based on user actions. So if you think about what we're looking at right now, I might actually just select a subset of my tree map on the left here. And effectively what happens, this is like, I think it's called proportional brushing. There's examples of this on Tableau Online. And what you'll see is that there's, you know, your subcategories or your proportion is based on whatever you select in this visualization on the left. So instead of actually having to use a filter to drive the behavior here, you're actually just using what's available for users to click on to adjust your visualization on the right there. One thing that we found a problem with, so this is why it's an enhancement. So an enhancement on this feature already. One thing that we found, and I often do this too, is that obviously if I wanted to add in something like bookcases or appliances, I can do like my control click and select appliances, which is fine, and it adds it in. But what if I accidentally don't select control or shift appropriately and I lose all of my other content? Then I kind of have to start all the way from the beginning. And if it's not in something easy like a tree map, and you're actually just looking through a list of users like I did the other day, it's super frustrating to have to start from the beginning. So what we actually did is we added in a new little, what do they call it? It's like a tooltip gesture that allows me to select the guys that I want, so add to set. And then if I want to add in something else, I can add to set, right? So it makes it a lot easier. And I don't find it so much a huge deal for doing stuff like this, but if you save your workbook and come back into it later and want to add new items to your set, I don't even think it's possible before this. It was really frustrating. So a tiny improvement, but that saves a lot of effort and work. And I can also deselect items. Sorry, I should also say. So alternatively, you know, I can add items to a set, but I can also remove them from set too, which is kind of makes it nice and sleek and easy to use there. Okay, I need to get to my other sheet here, but my Zoom meeting's in the way. So I'm gonna have to, there we go. Okay, so another thing that we have available now too is we actually have, this wasn't currently available. Finally, we have set controls. So here we're talking about the same set. So we're talking about the same proportional brushing, but now instead of clicking on the tree map, I have something, so I have like a little pick list. So it's almost like a quick filter. It looks the same as a quick filter, but effectively these are my set actions that I'm able to leverage. So this little pick list is new to set actions. So if you're leveraging set actions and you want to actually have a list to choose from, that's available for you now too. Cool. I know we have some public sector people on the line with us, so this might be something of interest. So we've always been pretty good at mapping, but we kind of lacked in one area in particular. So in Esri, really. So we have a new Esri ArcGIS connector, which I think is going to be a staple for a lot of our public sector clients here. So if this one's already built out, but effectively all you would do is go to the data source tab. Oh, we're loading. My connection's a little slow here. So if I actually built this out, here, I'll show you how this works. Okay, so more. Now you'll notice that there's a new item for Esri. And I actually have a server endpoint that I can add in here. Perfect. Okay, great. So now Tableau has access to any of the constructs on that server. So I'm actually just going to pull in a table here and update. And I'll go to a new sheet here. So effectively what you just saw in that other visualization, so I can drag shape to the canvas. My object ID is actually supposed to be under table, so I can grab my object ID and put that on detail. And maybe I want to put my hauler name on color, add all members. And so now all these polygons are defined in ArcGIS. So no need to use shapefiles, GeoJSON, or any kind of equivalent like that. So a nice addition to our mapping family there. Okay, another incremental improvement. I don't know how many of you leverage explain data, but it's a pretty cool new feature. A lot of people, I find, leverage it in desktop, but you can also use it on the server. So effectively, explain data helps you understand outlying data. So anytime you have, if it's a bar chart or a scatter plot and you have a value that just looks way out to lunch, what you can do is you can actually select your item. And in later versions here, we have this new light bulb item, which is called explain data. And effectively, what happens is behind the scenes, there are hundreds of potential explanations and algorithms that are running to give you a best guess on why you might have data that has an outlier in it. So this one actually shows us weather conditions, and a bunch of other stuff that you can click through. I've already done a full demo on this in a previous user group, so I won't go through that. But what is new is actually at the bottom here, I can actually deselect some of the columns that I know are irrelevant to this analysis here. So even if they were highly correlated with my business data, I certainly, there's sometimes you wouldn't want to base any business decisions on them. So I can actually deselect some of these items so that they're not taken into consideration when building out why something might be happening within the data itself. So just know that that's there for you to leverage as well. Okay. So I'm actually going to jump to the server to do the rest of my features here. There's actually one of my favorites. I will pull up.
In hands, just to
so I'm not sure if
sorry, Brian, just want to make sure we've got till 3:30. Is that correct? Just want to make sure, Brian.
I have like 2 more things, so we're
awesome.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll soldier on here. Okay, so another one that's pretty cool is metrics. So looking at my Superstore dashboard here, I see that I have monthly sales and my trend is pretty erratic. So I want to keep close tabs on that. And specifically, I might want to really keep close tabs on this technology category here. So what I can do is I can actually click on one of the points here, and up at the top, you're going to see a new item that's called metrics. So when I click on that, it actually automatically gives me like a KPI or a sparkline chart based on the technology linear trend that I have there, which is pretty cool. So this works for any viz with a time series measure. So now I have about 22,000 in sales for the current period. And now that metric becomes a headline that I can save anywhere. So I'm going to click create. I already have one called that, but that's fine. And I'm going to go to my metric. And now I see that this is actually, let me just go back here. So this is actually being saved with the rest of my content here, just like that. So I think of that metric just as a quick headline snapshot of something that's, really important to me. And over time, I might assemble a whole bunch of those, a bunch of these little metrics from various dashboards throughout the organization. So, and I can favorite it like any other content and kind of be up and on my way. But that's like a pretty quick win, because I know that we have a lot of clients that actually build out these kind of KPI dashboards, and they actually take a lot of time to build these little spark lines. So it's kind of nice to have a quick click and build. Oh, I think someone's not on mute there. It might be, I'm not sure, it might be Shane. Almost done. Something else that's new as well is I can actually upload workbooks to the server without Tableau desktop. So I can actually load in workbooks. Let's see if I can find one really quickly here. my back to work. So I can actually load up a workbook without first taking that mini step from Tableau Desktop, publishing it up to server. So I'm going to upload that here. Oh, maybe I don't have publishing rights. This is a new site of mine. Regardless, should work. You can publish up content from your desktop to server. Last, I think this is pretty much the last one here. So for any admins out there, we actually have a couple new out-of-the-box admin dashboards for you to leverage. One being called stats for unused content. So we have this one down here. And we also have, I think there's a backgrounder dashboard as well. Yeah, but let's just go to the stats for unused. So effectively now you have more out-of-the-box visualizations that you can leverage when you're kind of monitoring the health of your system there, if you don't already tap into your repository and create your own. Uh-oh, looks like it's not. It's taking a while to load there. But that's okay. While that loads, there are a couple other ones that I'm not going to show, but are worth noting. For those of you who use Tableau Prep, we now have a Salesforce connector. In addition, for Tableau Prep, you can also do incremental refreshes. So you don't have to do a full data load. You can actually just incrementally refresh your data, which is another kind of big win as well. And this is taking super long to load, which is unusual, but I've been having a couple issues today with my site. But effectively, that's pretty much it. I know it's really high level. I'm 2 minutes over, but hopefully you kind of picked a couple features that you could leverage from the new 2020.2, even if it's just, you know, upgrading your desktop if your server's not going to be upgraded for a while.
Awesome.
Thanks.
James, back to you.
Brandy,
Mm-hmm.
it for the hug meeting. I just want to
I
thank
can't-
speakers, you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're cutting in and out. I don't know if it's maybe my computer. Can you hear me?
Cutting out on my side, I think, as well.
Well, yeah, we're just thank you for all the attendees and all the panelists. You guys did an amazing job. I just realized I was in the chat with the panelists. You know, if we do this again,
You're
and
breaking up, James.
all the functions. Any questions? Shane's, I have a lot of time right now to put in the Q&A, but you can ask it in the Edmonton Tug group, and it should be fine. It's cutting out. Dang.
And you can always just email us too if you have questions after the fact, obviously.
Right.
If you
So
want
yeah.
to digest some of the information.
So hopefully next time we'll be able to meet in person, but if not, we'll be doing this again in a few months. But thank you again, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.